Excited to have everybody join us today. Will's in his car. Hey, Will. Glad you made it. Love people joining from wherever you can join. Excited to have you guys. Got a really special hour today, so we're going to get started pretty quickly so that we don't miss a minute of value that we have for you today. We'll have folks joining in and out throughout the event, but I'm going to go ahead and get started and share my screen here. And welcome, everybody. If you don't know who I am, I'm going to go and apologize. No, I'm not going to apologize. I was going to say, you've been getting emails from me about this for quite some time. I don't owe you any apologies. You haven't unsubscribed, so you're here on purpose, which is good and exciting. I'm Laura Johns, founder and CEO of the Business Growers, and I'm really glad you're here. Chances are you're a managed services provider, you're in the telecom world, and you've heard of QBR, you're doing QBRs, you want to start doing QBRs, and you want to learn how to make them as good as you possibly can get them. Today, we're hearing from a lot of folks that are doing them quarterly, some that start doing them, and then after they do them for the first quarter, they stop doing them. So we're going to get everybody really comfortable with a couple of things. One, how to run them, and how to make sure that you're maximizing revenue, new revenue opportunities, as well as your retention part of the equation. So I've invited some awesome people to join me today. They're going to introduce themselves. One, Dustin Laster, VP of Technical Operations at Fuse.Cloud. Also, Matt Layne, President of Managed Services at Scipio Technologies. And we have a bonus guest today, Paul Telesco, also of Scipio Technologies. We realized as we were planning for this that Paul kind of holds the key to a lot of the answers. So we said, hey, Paul, why don't you join us as well? So you'll see him pinned as we chat today. Paul, we're really glad to have you here today as well. If you have seen my emails and you're not exactly sure who I am, I've been in telecom and tech marketing for the last 20 years, and I've worked with managed services providers and IT leaders all over the country. And today I run a marketing agency that does turnkey marketing for both of the companies that you see represented today. And I'm really excited about today's conversation because we're going to dig into how to turn QBRs into real revenue and a great opportunity for your clients. I want to start by congratulating both of the speakers on the call and the companies represented. Fuse.Cloud and Scipio Technologies both ranked in the MSP 501 list that was just announced this week, and they'll be celebrating in September in Orlando, I believe, that honor. So we're really excited about that. Today will be recorded. I do a webinar and podcast on a regular basis, and all of the content that I share goes directly to the YouTube channel. So if you really love what you find today, what you hear today, what you learn today, and you want to share it with other people that you work with, you can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Business Growers and keep getting new ideas and new content. Dusty, I'm going to ask both of you, and then Paul, if you want to give us a little, heads up of who you are and why you showed up today. Just introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, where you're from, and why you're on this call, why you got picked, if you know.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk about QBRs and the value they bring. I'm Dusty. I go by Dusty. I'm the VP of Tech Ops here at Fuse.Cloud. Been in the MSP world for a long time, right out of school. Got into the MSP world. Work directly with our clients in our QBR process today. I've been like 13 and a half years in the MSP world. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. And then Matt Layne, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so Matthew Layne, President of Managed Services at Scipio Technologies, one of the partners as well. Been working in technology since I got out of college into the professional world, but then I went into MSP around 2017, 2018 is when I jumped from what I was telling Laura earlier, the client side to the provider side. Love MSP work, always was, really intrigued by technology. Most of my jobs before were technology based. So really looking forward to the discussion on QBRs. We've seen good success with our QBRs as far as client retention goes, just revenue growth, things like that. So looking forward to the discussion. Love working with the business growers. We've started working with them Q4 of last year. And it's been a great relationship so far. And I guess I've pulled the wool over Laura's eyes a little bit, and she asked me to join this webinar with you guys. So looking forward to the
Well,
discussion.
I appreciate it. You're an active participant in our client masterminds, and I
Yeah.
hear you talk about QBR, so I thought that you and Paul would be a good fit. So, Paul, will you tell us a little bit about, even though your photo doesn't have a slide, you're a little bonus addition, but tell us a little bit about why you're joining us today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Paul Telesco, Director of Business Development here at Scipio. Been in IT for longer than I'd care to say, been in MSP work for probably 18 years. Again, similar to everyone else, been in IT since I left school, technology based. I am the one that's doing the QBRs for us on a pretty continual basis. So I think I can maybe be able to bring a little real world insight to this as
That's
well.
Great. That's great. You got a lot of good examples you can teach us with. So we're going to get right into it, but before we do, a couple of ground rules. Now, we got a bunch of folks on this webinar that showed up live today, and I know that if I said raise your hand if you're busy right now, everyone will raise their hand, because if we're in this industry, we're always busy. We know that kind of comes with the territory. Exactly. Everybody on the call can raise their hand. But you showed up today, whether you're in your car, you're multitasking, you're on your cell phone, whatever that is. I just want to say, hey, you showed up, and we have a lot to learn. These folks, I would beg to say this is probably the first time that these particular companies together have represented your company as on a webinar together. So this is the first time this has ever happened, and we're talking about a very important topic for retention and new revenue growth in your business. So you have shown up today. Let's take a minute. Let's put the phone down. Let's shut down the Teams. Let's shut down the tasks and turn your phone over, whatever it takes. You want to grab a bite to eat, that's acceptable. But outside of that, utilize the time that you have invested today to learn something and put on your participant hat. So I want to, if you can just chat ready, put ready in the chat. This is Zoom, so you might take you a second to find the chat. A lot of times these IT folks are mad at me for being on Zoom and not Teams, but in the chat, put ready if you're ready to learn, ready to participate for the next hour. I'm going to wait till I see at least 3 readies. Okay, good, great. Linda, Johnny, all right, good, we're ready. All right, so let's talk about why QBRs are important. I would love to see, drop a 1 in that same chat if you're currently using a QBR framework at some level, at any level, or you've done one before and then you stop doing them because you forget or whatever. Just drop a 1 in the chat if you're doing it at any level, just to kind of see if we've got folks on the call who have started it. I'm not really good at multitasking, but I'm seeing some ones. Okay, we got some folks doing it. That's great. Good. All right, so we've got folks that have done them before. I think if we showed up today, we know that they're important in some way. But Matt, when we first talked and preparing for this, you kind of pinned QBRs down to 2 big things: risk and revenue, right? So talk about that a little bit. What do QBRs mean for you guys at Scipio?
Yeah, so they, like you said, they help us identify risk that we have within our clients. That risk that goes really for them and us, right, as their provider. But then it's helped us grow our revenue. So, we're trying to, the QBRs help us identify gaps in the customer's environments, whether that's what we got going on now with Windows 10 machines going to Windows 11, whether it's patching, what kind of security posture do they have, even shadow IT. Is there somebody inside that organization that's doing IT and not talking to us about it, not letting us do the job? And then it also reaches out to other vendors, right? So how are we managing those under other vendors? What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify those risks so that we can protect our client, but at the same time, we can protect ourselves. So that whatever those gaps are, we can minimize them. We can fill them with our solutions, with our services, our solutions, new hardware, whatever it may be. And generally at that time, that gives us a chance to grow that revenue. We got to think about their compliance and their security, any operational disruptions that may be caused by these. And if we can help the client identify those, we can reduce that risk. We can make them happy. We can make them a happier client. And then ultimately that's going to help us on our revenue side and on our growth side. So that's kind of the way that's our out of the box, or out of how we approach it. And then from there, as we get through this, obviously we get many different tentacles, but that's kind of the approach we take right out of the box.
I love it. That's great. And I think if you kind of think of it that way, you realize it's not just about one or the other. It really truly is about both. It's going to be good for your company no matter what, but also reminding ourselves how important QBRs are for our clients.
Yeah.
So Dusty, at Fuse.Cloud, you kind of position, I've heard you say the buzzword a lot, the VCIO kind of component. The VCIO is a service. So, and I feel like based on what we've discussed, why are they important? That's something that I feel like you kind of bring to the table in terms of what you guys are doing. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for a small, even to some medium-sized companies, they can afford a chief information officer. That's just not in their budget. And so you already have a relationship with the client. So that's what kind of we're offering fractional services, kind of like what Laura, you do for us. You offer fractional marketing services for us. It's the same perspective. I'm going to build a little bit off what Matthew said. We as service providers love to hold on to our clients' risk and like, no, this is mine, and it's not ours. It doesn't belong to us. And I would say we're pretty bad at not telling our clients their risk, and we just hold on to it, and we just need to give it to them. Like, this is your risk. They need to know about it. They deserve to know about it because that's what they're paying us for ultimately. So as their VCIO service, part of these meetings you're having is kind of having some hard conversations with the client. You're like, hey, you have risk here. This needs to be addressed. Now, naturally, you can't just give them a risk and no solution. You have to do both. But also, the retention is really important here. When you're doing these meetings, you're really getting to know the client. There's an old quote that says, from Theodore Roosevelt, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you don't know your client, they're not going to care what you're saying. All they're going to hear is a business, like a sales pitch, and they get enough of those. So,
yeah.
Well, and my guess is that, you don't want your clients to hear about a risk to their business, especially that kind of is in your territory from somebody else, from somebody coming in to do a risk assessment or whatever. So
that's a great point. One thing that we like to do in the first one we do is do a service review. Make sure the client understands, hey, here's what we do for you.
Yeah.
This is, and because there's a lot of times your customer has a higher expectation of what you're providing than what you are. So you're going to want to provide that list of here's our services, here's what we're doing.
I can tell you what they think. They think you do our IT.
That's exactly right.
And in their brain, that could be their computers, their website.
It's plugged in.
It's plugged in. No, you're right. I mean, I just heard it earlier in the week from somebody. Well, you provide our IT. Yeah, I do, but that's not that service you're wanting or what you're needing me to do. It doesn't fall under the services we're offering you. And we discussed
another point around retention. Most of your interactions with your client is them writing you a check or them calling you when they're having a problem. And you really want to change that dynamic. You really want to change that dynamic.
It seems like it's the same.
You want to change that dynamic and show that you're there to help and you're there for improving things and getting away from the problems. Because you don't want to get in that conundrum like, why am I paying you so much?
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm still having all these problems, or why am I paying you so much and everything's working great?
Kind of building off what you said, Laura, like you don't want your client to know that there are services that other people can offer. It's worse if they find out you have services that they needed after they needed it, like a breach or some continuity solution. Like that's worse.
Yeah. You don't want to be like, we had that. We just didn't.
We had a solution. We just didn't tell
you.
Yeah, that's not good.
As it being a retention tool, clients don't leave because of downtime. They leave because of bad service. They leave because you don't know what's going on inside their hallways.
That's good.
You don't service them and you don't have a relationship with them. And that's why they leave.
That's what I think this is why this is so important, because if you're not talking to them, someone else is.
That's right.
Bottom line.
Yep.
Yeah, and it can't get any more basic and to the point than that, Dusty. It's, If you're not talking to them, the next person is. And another thing, it helps. QBRs help you align. I mean, all this is alignment with the clients, right? We want to get in alignment, lockstep with our clients, so we can give them the service they need, right? We're not trying to. When we go in to a QBR, it's not. We're not talking about technical things, right? We're not talking about, hey, we closed 50 tickets for you last month, and we hit our SLA. We're talking about alignment, strategic thinking, strategic planning, alignment with the client, so that they can worry about their business objectives and not worry about technology.
That's
Exactly.
good.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's good.
Why are we talking about something we promised we would deliver? That should be normal.
Right, right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
exactly right. You know,
The
business alignment is greater than technical checklist.
I was going to say the local restaurant you go to that you love so much doesn't come up and say, "I brought you a steak."
Right.
I brought you the steak. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
It's the
That's
outcome. It's the result. It's how good it was
Right.
that determines the tip, right?
That's
Right.
exactly right.
I want to touch on this just because I think just as we talk about, we'll move into kind of, okay, how do I even get started if I've never done one before, or if I didn't hear of QBR until I sat here today. I want to talk about nomenclature a little bit because we call it QBRs because it's quarterly business review, but Dusty brought up something once before about how that may not always be quarterly for every client. So you have a different name for it in your business, and I'd be interested to have you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in our company, Fuse.Cloud, we refer to them as strategic business reviews. And the
Okay.
reason why is there's some clients that they don't need to meet with me 4 times a year. They don't need to meet with me
Right.
twice a year. Once a year is just fine, and that's all they need. And that's all they really
Right.
want.
I was going to say, it's all they want too, right, Dusty? Sometimes they don't want to see us.
Right. They just want everything to work. Well, that's good. I like that. And you can really call it, I mean, call it whatever you want to call it as long as it works, right? That's kind of the point.
Right.
That's not shove it into a quarterly if quarterly doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious, Laura, if you don't mind. I'm curious to see what everyone
Yeah.
else is running the meeting, what they refer to their meetings as, because QBRs,
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if most people
Johnny.
don't refer to them as QBRs anymore.
Johnny just said we call them executive business reviews, EBRs. I like that.
Yeah.
Does anybody
That's
else have
good.
another name? QBRs, strategic. I like executive business reviews.
I
That
do
sounds
too.
like
That was
they better show up if it's an executive business review, right? I like that, Johnny. That's good. Anybody else have anything you want to put in the comments? I like EBR. That's good.
Yeah, I like
Mhm.
EBR and SPR really, really nice. That's good.
So if people are on the call before and they're starting from total scratch, they've never done one before, how do they get started? Because we need to decide who in our current customer list takes priority. This is a time. I mean, Paul's telling me he's sitting on a lot of them. So, this is a time consuming thing. This is not something you can necessarily, do with the robot these days. I know a lot of things we can do with AI, but a big part of QBRs is being face to face or on Zoom or having this conversation in real time. So stewardship reviews was another one. I like that.
Oh, that's good.
So where do you start? What customers do we pick? Who's setting this up? Who in our internal, on the org chart is doing it? How do we even get started? Can the Scipio guys start and kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what we're looking at are those clients that are maybe at risk or high revenue, obviously, right? They're at risk, so we need to get in front of them, see what we can do to mitigate that risk. They're high revenue, so they're the ones that we're going to talk to quarterly, right? More than likely, we're talking to them more often than that, but quarterly, we want to do a review with them. We want to get in front of them, sit down at their location if we need, if we can. We want to do it face to face. Obviously, we can do some of these things like we're doing now with technology, but we want to sit down face to face. So we're looking at those at-risk clients, those high revenue clients, but also we look at those high effort, low revenue clients. So then we can bring that balance maybe to where it's more not, high effort, low revenue, and we get it to where they're kind of equal, if not push up. And that's usually obviously the smaller ones, right? They're usually a lot more effort, at least in the beginning. So
they just want to know why that.
Looking at.
They just want to know why that 12-year-old computer has so many issues. Like,
right.
Why do I have to call every day? I'm like, why are you calling every day?
That's right. That's right.
Then you start blaming sales for taking them on in the first place, right?
Yeah. And I kind of hit it earlier. This is not technicians doing this. Technicians aren't scheduling these. Technicians aren't participating in these. These are sales executives, account managers, client success people. That's who are doing these QBRs. It's not technicians. We're not talking about tickets and SLAs.
The conversation will quickly devolve into, we're having this problem.
Yeah.
This is going on. After we're done, can we do? And then the focus is just gone.
Yeah.
On the strategic side of it.
Yeah, because again, we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to strategize and align, our organizations so we can, help the clients out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where we're starting. Paul, I don't know if there's
That's good.
anybody else you want to add to that as far as targets.
No, I mean, I've worked at places where the sales team performs the QBR. I've worked at companies where there's an 8-member account management team with 2 VCIOs / pre-sale engineers that run the team. So there's different
Mm-hmm.
ways to do it. I think the big point is you don't want a technical resource that the client is familiar that provides them technical assistance, because that's just when that's where they're
Then
going to
it
go with the
becomes a
conversation.
one-to-one dialogue the whole time.
Did you fix
Exactly.
Mary's phone? Did you look at
Yeah.
Tom's PC and those things? So you really
Yeah.
want to make sure you get it
Mhm.
from the beginning. It's a strategic thought and it's a strategic focus.
Mhm.
I would
That's
say
good.
like a relational person with technical aptitude is probably the best person you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody
And
who's
that's
able
why-
to know enough about the
Mhm.
technology to
And
respond
if
or to
you're right, and if you're a small MSP, congratulations. If you're the owner, that's you.
It's you. That's exactly
right.
That's you. So
exactly
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's why we have Paul, in the position he is. He's really our lead on QBRs, and then the rest of us, we, whether it's the sales executive or whoever's managing the account, we assist him with those QBRs.
Mm-hmm. And how do you even schedule it? Are you guys, I mean, in keeping up with it, I want to point out, you said, those that are at risk, before you assume that you have a good system in place to evaluate. Like at the business growers, we have red, yellow, and green. Every
Mhm.
client is red, yellow, or green at all times. And if,
Mhm.
they've had challenges, in a short period of time, then they move to red. Or if they are a new client in the first 90 days, they stay in red. Or if they're coming up for renewal, they're, we kind of, and it goes to our whole team when someone changes positions. So everyone knows, our graphic designers and web developers know, and our account managers know. So I think the assumption is you've got some sort of system in place. We obviously can pull a report to see whose transactions are the largest. That's easy.
Right.
But, having a good system in place in your CRM or in your, your current system to know who is, red, yellow, green, or however you categorize it is assumed to be the number one, and then get started from there. Do you just email them, or do you have, I mean, do you have a reason to reach out, or, how do you even get started? This might just trying to think real practically. What does that conversation look like with your customer?
I mean, I can take that one if you want, Laura.
Yeah.
So for a new client, they know about it in the pre-sales process, and right after we onboard them to our services, we have our first initial strategic business review.
Nice.
Right then and there, and then right after we finish our business review, we schedule the next one still in the meeting. So there's still right then and there for when you're first starting to do this service, you're going to need to get some buy-in from clients. And so what I found useful to start those meetings for clients who have not had one is to send an agenda ahead of time, and they can see the value that's in the meeting that they haven't had yet, and that'll pique their interest to reach back out and actually set that meeting. And then some of our legacy clients have to actually pick up the phone call and say, hey, like, this is really important. You're going to want to be in this meeting. So
I like that.
Yeah.
That's
and
good.
then have a reason to, right? And we all know, every one of us on this call participating in the panel and on the other side knows there's plenty of reasons, but you got some low-hanging fruit reasons right now, right? You got the Windows 11 upgrades, that's easy. And then you got security. Especially with a lot of the clients that we are all supporting, we're trying. At times it feels like we're dragging them along to increase their security posture, their cybersecurity posture. So that's easy. Again, low hanging fruit to say, this is why I'm reaching out. This is why I want to talk to you. But an agenda, Dusty's he's right. Have an agenda. Have a schedule. This is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. I would say as a tip, if you've never done one before, get your closest client that you have, who you have a really good relationship with,
Friendly.
And practice.
tell them I'm gonna try this for the first time, and work through that and figure out your strategic business reviews before you go to your whales and do one that's terrible.
That's good.
Don't do meetings that suck, because they're never going to be scheduled again.
Yeah, that's great advice, Dusty, and that's exactly what we did. Find the friendlies. Find the friendlies that number one, you've probably been in contact with them a lot, and they don't care to give you good feedback, right? They don't care to tell you, Matt, Matt, that was not good. Don't ask that question again, or don't say that to your next client.
Yeah.
They don't care to give you that good feedback. So
I think
go ahead, Dusty.
Every meeting should get better and better, because you're still asking your clients, no matter if they're your whale, the smallest one, your closest one, if they're at risk, even, you should always ask them, hey, did you find value from this meeting? What did I cover that you didn't think needed to be covered? Like, what did you not find value from? Pull it out of it. You're not having this meeting for someone to not care about, right?
Right.
And then, like, the bonus tip for referrals, if they say, yes, I got value from it, you ask them, who do you know that could value from this meeting too? Boom, you got a referral.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great. A couple quick things I failed to mention early on. I'm going to get in trouble if I don't say it now. We do have, if you stick around till the end of this, we've already had one person drop off of this call. So we must be getting close to halftime. But we do have a QBR, a free kit, basically, that gives you an agenda, gives you a structure for your meeting that we're going to give to everyone at the end of this webinar. So that's kind of a little extra perk to stay on till the end. Secondly, I've been doing this a lot with sales internally in my organization and other kind of process-oriented things to perfect. But if you're doing QBRs on Zoom or on Teams or on a recording type format, the live ones, you can set up a recorder, in the meeting. But I've just finished a book called The AI-Driven Leadership, and I'm forgetting the name of the person who wrote it, Gary something, and I might get you to throw it in the chat because I'm reading reading 3 books at a time right now. But he talks about this format to use in AI tools called CRIT, which starts with context. You give it all the context you possibly can give it. You upload the transcripts from these conversations. You tell it, the R in CRIT stands for role, and you tell it to act as an expert MSP. And you could even cite some of the biggest, best MSPs that the owners of those MSPs, or, hey, you act like someone from this MSP who is deeply knowledgeable in quarterly business reviews. Then you say, interview me, that's the I, ask me up to 3 to 5 questions to gain deeper context, which that's what we forget to do in AI sometimes, is to tell it to ask us questions. AI-Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. Thank you. I was going to try to call him Gary. And then T is then you say what you need to do, the task. And then give me, the top 10 things that I could have done to improve in this QBR. And that's where you can start giving your team members that are performing these QBRs feedback by letting, AI expert QBR leaders evaluate the conversation. So that's another, just like a second layer of, and doing that in any process, in any, recorded type call, I'm learning is a really good way to just point out some things that can lead us to better results. So, okay, we're going to talk about the actual meeting. The next question is, what should the flow of the QBR or executive stewardship reviews or EBRs or whatever we're doing, what should the actual flow of that meeting look like? And I think I'm going to start with Dusty here, because you said you send the agenda in advance. So tell us about how long does it last, and how do we get through it without it turning into, like Paul was talking about earlier, without it turning into a tech showstopper,
a snooze
type
fest,
of event.
Honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
a snooze fest, yeah, or that. Or an argument. Yeah.
Yeah, that's even worse. So typically what we do when we first start our QBR with our client, or strategic business review or executive business review, is we do a quick check-in with our client, because I want the client to get in a strategic mindset. I don't want them to go into the day-to-day mind of, like, I have to do this. This is a problem. I need to address this with Dusty while he's here, or whatever. I want to get them into a strategic mindset. So I'm asking the client, what are you doing in the next 18 months? What are your company doing, right? Do you have a new service line you're offering? Are you going to open up a new location? Are you going to change vendors anytime soon, as far as, like, their business line of applications? And then they answer those questions, and I go farther out, like, what do you do in 3 years? And that gets the client really in a strategic mindset, so that you can focus on the client's technical strategy goals. Because if they don't care what you're talking about, you might as well be talking to a brick wall. It's not gonna hit. It's not gonna hit. It's just a sales pitch.
Yeah.
And so we do a check-in. We talk about their goals. We ask, like, what are 3 things technology could do for you, for your workflow, and that's how we get some projects. And honestly, I meant to mention this earlier. Your QBRs should really fund your professional services pipeline.
Absolutely.
They should keep several, I don't know, depending on the size of your MSP, but you should have several engineers just doing nothing but what's coming out of
Dedicated to that.
PCF.
Mm-hmm.
Should definitely be a key contributor to the pipeline for sure.
Mhm.
The pipeline. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I always do a quick check-in to see how things are going for my support team. I check for chronic issues, just a quick touch-in on a technical perspective, and then we jump right into a security assessment,
Yeah.
where we're showing the clients their risk and the remediation plans.
Yeah, even though we said, hey, it's not a technical discussion, we're not going in there to talk about issues, you still got to be aware. You got to be aware of what's been going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If there's
Yeah, you don't
anything-
want to walk in the room and there's problems between you and they go unspoken. That shows you're not showing that you care that way for sure.
Yeah.
I would also say, like, if you're going to that meeting and you don't know how that client makes their revenue,
Yeah.
that's a big problem.
Mm.
Yeah,
If you
gotta
don't
understand their
know-
business.
Yeah, if you don't know, that
Mhm.
should be one of the first questions you ask is how do you make your revenue, and how
That's
does
right.
tech help that?
That's exactly. So what I was going to say is, where is technology helping or holding you back?
Yeah.
And to Dusty's point, you've got to know what business they're in. You got to understand how they make their money.
Mhm.
Look, you don't have
How
to have
they
an
leverage the
intimate-
technology.
Yeah, you don't have to have an
Yeah.
intimate. You don't have to say, "Hey, show me your P&L." But
Mhm.
hey,
Oh, I lost him.
on the mastermind,
We lost you for a second, Matt. That may have just been me. I thought I lost you for a second.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Either.
So, but like we talked about earlier on the masterminds about
Mm-hmm.
how's revenue going. So, or how's things going? How's the pipeline looking? Is it nice and healthy? Same discussions with your clients when you go in there.
Right. And I
I
love
will-
that you pointed out, Dusty, what he's referring to is 2 hours ago, we were on a client's mastermind that I hold every month, and we were talking about slow seasons and slow sales seasons. And I think this is kind of a good complement to that of, you might have a dedicated team or team members who are solely focused on generating revenue from these types of opportunities versus new logo.
I will say that this year is prime NRC for the managed service providers, because 5 years ago was the beginning of COVID and everyone had to refresh their hardware to work from home.
Yep.
And the general rule of thumb is every 5 years you're replacing assets. That's the general rule of thumb.
Mhm.
Some people do 3, some people do less, whatever. 5 is just average. So
Yeah.
this year should be prime NRC.
That sounds like a marketing campaign right there. Was
Yeah,
the
it
last,
should.
did you change your hardware and during COVID? It's time for an upgrade,
It's time.
Let's work on
Yeah.
that. Good one,
We'll get on
Dusty.
that offline. Yeah. So a couple of you shared some screenshots with me of different tools that you use. I think you could use whatever tool makes the most sense for your business, but I'd love for you guys to talk about what tools you're using to show them. I know we're not getting, we said we're not going to get it too in the weeds, but I think I've got some screenshots here of assessments. Can you talk a little bit about this, Dusty? And then Paul, I know you guys use a tool as well.
Yeah, so we use, and I love Lifecycle Insights. Marnie and Alex built it, and then now ScalePad owns it. Both of them do a great job. Love talking to both of them. Those guys are great resources to ask about VCIO. Marnie Stockman, I think, and Alex Farling. So on the first slide is an assessment score, like a security assessment score. So it shows them on a 0 to 100 what their number is. And so from a non-technical perspective, this makes it really easy to understand their health. And then we break it down by categories. On the right side, we can see a hardware lifecycle report where we're showing them, hey, you got 78 assets. You got 41 of them that need to be replaced. So it just kind of gives them like a single pane of paper or pane of glass, whatever, to show like what they need to work on for their organization to remove tech debt, remove their risk.
Mm-hmm. What about I'll show another screenshot here. I think you gave me a couple of them, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we also give them a 5-year budget forecast, which I
like
love.
that.
Because
Mhm.
you're not quoting something every quarter, every year, every month. It's budgeted. So it's like, hey, remember when I told you had a computer replaced in December 2027? It's time. It's time to replace it. The server that's going to cost $50,000 to replace, it's time. You should have been saving on that.
Right. But also it
last-
makes those conversations not a surprise,
It's not. No. And it's like, hey, are you ready to do this? It's just a simple email. It's not like let me create this proposal that's 3 pages long. It's just like, hey, it's time.
Yeah, you've been
Right.
talking
We've already
about
talked about this. That's
Mhm.
right. That's right.
you're aligned with them. You're strategic. You've been planning strategically.
Mhm.
Right. What about you guys? I got a little screenshot of your stuff, Paul. Tell us
Yeah,
about what this
so
is.
I think the main pillars of what these tools give us are pretty similar. You're looking at assessment gap reports. You're giving the client the ability to compare them from where they are now to where they should be. Here's A, where
Mhm.
you are. Here's B, where you're going. Here's the plan to get there. So a nice thing about this is it also shows a comparative score based on your industry. So under the 41 local, you'll see under these numbers, it'll show, it has a target score, and then this is what most people in your industry are scoring, and here's where you're scoring. Because people are always saying, what are other people doing? Especially I worked a lot in legal, and you'll have clients that are like, they're always focused on the big law firms, what they're doing for help. So it's nice to know, hey, people out here are doing this. Your competition is doing this. And
Mhm.
security isn't just, a risk protector. You can sell that. You can market your security. So that's another factor. You can
Mhm.
use that to know that you're doing more than your competition is. But back to the report, you look at, your gap assessments, your assets, and your budget, and that's really what the big focuses are.
Mhm.
And as you go through ours is broken up into 4 different pillars for the assessment. You start with architecture. That's, are your desktops less than 5 years old, like Dustin said earlier? Are your servers less than 7 years old? Do you have PDUs on all your network infrastructure? Questions like that. Under service, we talk about, do you have a provider that's helping your workstations? In most cases, that's going to be us. Depending on how
Mhm.
you run an MSP, do you have someone that's providing your firewall, managing your firewall? Do you have someone providing this service, server, storage, all that? You want to make sure they have that covered, business hours, after hours. Again, you want your client to understand what you're providing them now and
Yeah.
what they're not getting that you can.
Yeah.
Risk, that's completely security focused. It's talking about vulnerability assessment. Are you using a password manager? Are you doing cyber user awareness training? Do you have SIMSOC? You're really getting into that stuff and the importance of, again, A, you don't have it. B is you got to get it. And
Yeah.
how do we get you there? So as those gaps come up, you'll see the project roadmap kind of falls out on its own on the left. These are the projects you want to focus on. I just clicked a bunch of them just for an example.
Mhm.
But then, you're going to prioritize. You're not doing 15 projects in a month. You're looking at the most, this is where your input is most valuable, as you say, hey,
Mhm.
we have this project, this risk that's not really that critical, but here's something, Windows 11, like Matt said,
Mhm.
this is coming. There's a date. Let's get this
Mhm.
done. Let's get your assets up to
Mhm.
date where they need to be. And we've got a few months. Let's budget it out so we don't have to have a one hit on that.
Yeah.
So it's really these tools. They provide those 3 big things: the gap
Well,
assessment.
I think I'll also build on Paul, like you said earlier, like you're going over what you offer the client again, and that's so important
Yes,
because
I was going to say that too, Dusty. I think that,
so many
like we were talking
times,
about earlier.
yeah, so many times clients buy our service and they still don't understand what they just bought.
There's going to
Right.
be a time during that
Right.
gap assessment where you're going to click no, and they're expecting you to click yes.
Yeah, and they think that
And
you're
you're having
doing something.
conversations about those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, for the most part, especially if you're recording calls or you have the ability to, record or document or send those reports after the fact, having that proof that, hey, we had this conversation, not that we're trying to stick it to them or get them in any way, but you are giving on a regular basis them documented evidence that you've had this conversation, you've told them this, you're not going to surprise them, with the a big massive bill that you had this conversation they were prepared for, which really is looking out for them. But then you're also able to say, hey, remember when I told you we didn't offer, we offered this and you chose not to invest in it or whatever. So
Yeah.
And
Just like,
and
just
that's your
like,
pipeline too.
yeah.
right.
It's like having a conversation with somebody and then follow up with an email. Hey, this is what we talked about. Just
Yeah.
so you know, just so we got this in writing and documentate, we got it documented. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're offering you. This is
Yeah.
what we talked about project wise, and this is the roadmap to get these things accomplished. And this
What
is
a
the
great
project you can
tool.
expect.
Yeah, like if I'm an IT director or I'm a,
Absolutely.
administrator of some sort, like what a
Hey,
great tool to be able to use to take to the rest of my
right.
team or whatever.
We sell this, and I'm sure Dusty and Fuse does too. We sell this as part of our CIO services, right? Is hey, we're
Hmm.
going to use this tool, and then when it comes time for board meetings, partner meetings, whatever you have, your monthly management meetings, we have reports that we can give you that we can participate in meetings with you, or we can give you so we can show it, we can outline, and we can have visual reports or proof of to show what we're going to do. So
Yeah,
I mean, we don't use these tools just internally. We can give our clients access to human eyes, and
right.
we can
That's
see their
good.
stuff, right? And then and we can collaborate inside that tool as far as, hey, this is what we got, this is what the projects we're looking at, and this is the roadmap to get all these things complete.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped both of those tools here in the chat. And if you are on this call, we still got pretty much everybody here, and you're using tools that were not listed, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We want to make sure we all learn from each other and have good tools to use for our QBRs.
Another thing that when it comes to the risk side of things, that when we talk to clients, we run into a lot. And increasingly, they're getting better. But when it comes around policies and procedures, especially policies, right? They're like, well, I don't need policies. That's why we got you. No, I have policies. I have policies to support you and all my other clients. But you've got to have policies that
Mm,
on your organization that I need. Yeah, I'll abide by those, right? As a
hmm
provider or a subcontractor, whatever it may be, I'll abide to those policies, but you got to have those in place. And another thing
hmm
that you hear is cyber insurance. Is
mm,
I don't have cyber insurance. That's what I pay you for. No, I have cyber
mm,
insurance. You need it. But then because cyber insurance is a must these days for everybody.
mm,
That helps your QBRs too, because they give an assessment every year. Hey, are you doing these things? That helps your QBRs. That helps your planning with the client too. So a lot of these
mm.
things are, when it comes from a risk perspective, you know, we got to let our clients know they need cyber insurance, but then we can use that to help us as part of our QBRs. Is, are we hitting these things to make sure you're getting
Yeah.
covered for your cyber risk?
Or
I mean,
what services can we turn on to reduce your
Exactly.
premium?
Exactly.
I was going to say, I'm curious to know, do any of you do that? I think they're just when you're selling it, I know we do it on the sales side. We'll go into a prospect and show them how much it costs to not do business with us, how much it costs them if they do have a risk,
Yeah.
or some sort of a ransomware attack, whatever. Do you have any way to show them that like here's how much things cost if you aren't, like we all know when we go get health
Yeah.
or life insurance, for example, life
Yeah.
insurance, we know that cost of death is expensive to our families. And so we're not, so do you have any opportunity to do that
I
in
mean,
this QBR? Is that,
I
So
mean,
typically when we're talking about
go ahead.
cybersecurity, I didn't mean to talk with you. Go ahead,
No,
Mitch.
you're good. No, go, Dusty. Yeah.
There are some general case studies that we show them where, because a lot of companies or clients are like, well, I'm just small fish. I'm just 8 people or 10 people. Like the hackers aren't going to be concerned by me.
That's
And
right.
my response is like, hey, so a hacker can hack 10 of you, get the same amount of money with less effort than hacking one enterprise company.
Yeah. That's
And I'm trying to find these case studies that I have that I normally share with my clients. Give me just a second.
while you try to
just
find
wonder if
that,
those
Dusty,
like build the case for any add-ons or any of those,
exactly.
revenue opportunities.
One of my partners, Jason Wheeler, he said it. I don't know where he heard it, but he said it perfect. That saying, "Well, I'm too small. They're not coming after me." Well, no, you're just too small to make the news.
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
too small for the
Mm.
media to hear.
Those
You're
are
not
the
small enough.
that's the hard
Nobody.
swallowed pills
Yeah.
that we get. Yeah.
Nobody's too small. I mean,
It's definitely, they're casting big nets. They're not looking
exactly.
at big
Mhm.
pieces. They're take as many shots as you can, and those will be the ones that are going to work.
Yeah.
I like it. We just got it in the chat. QBRs aren't just a look back. They're an opportunity to show up as proactive, trusted advisor, anticipating needs and offering expert guidance before issues arise. That's good. We position
right.
ourselves as a strategic partner, which is, that's exactly right. right aligned with what we've been talking about. That's great. So what about those good stats here from Dusty? Yeah, he put some case studies to let us know that small businesses are not exempt from cyber attacks. Like you said, they just don't make the news, right, Matthew?
Yeah.
I like that. You got a lot of sound bites. I'm gonna have to reproduce on our social media after this podcast or webinar. What about people who are just challenging to deal with? Because if you're bringing a lot of this information, like there could be some that just don't want to hear it, or like you said, this is what I'm paying you for. Why are we sitting here? Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you combat people who might be a little challenging to work with? Because a lot of times, especially if you're dealing with a CEO, unless you're talking about how you're making him money instead of costing him money, he probably doesn't want to talk about it. So tell me about any challenging challenging situations you may have encountered. Paul, you might have some good examples. I don't know.
It's not really that bad. I think one thing you want to focus on is that you're there to help them. They may not want to have that meeting, but you are there to find that risk. And like Matt said, that risk is theirs.
Yeah.
We're not on this call to protect ourselves. We are there to make money, but it's not a sales call. We're focusing on the client. We want to put the focus on them, look at their business. Here's your risk. Here's what it could cost you. Here's how we can help. I think that's a big thing you want to focus on. And again, the difficulty of, the tactical versus strategic is one you're going to face a lot. And that's really, again, just about focus. Make sure you're talking, like Dustin said, look long-term, talk about plans, talk about what you're doing next year. Make sure they're not in the moment. Make sure they're paying attention to what the topic is and really what you're trying to do for them.
It's like, I'll build off that a little bit, because like if you're talking about multi-factor authentication is something we all know we have to have, right? But there are still some clients today who refuse to turn it on. And so if they're thinking short term, like I don't want to mess with that today, but they're not thinking 8 months from today, I'm going to get breached, right? It's just going to happen. And so when we have difficult clients who just refuse to do this, going back to what Matthew said earlier, like at the beginning of the conference, we need to remove our risk as a provider. So what we do is we have them sign a declination form. Like, I know that we were told to do this, and I still don't want to do this. And again, that just reinforces to the client, this is my risk. And sometimes I've had tell a client, like, you could go out of business from this and I'm still going to get paid. You're not going to get paid.
Right.
Your payroll is not going through, but mine will. And so it's sometimes it's having those really hard conversations.
Yeah. I don't know what the percentage is now, but but around COVID, I think it was like, it was over 50% of the businesses that under whatever the revenue threshold was, under $10 million, they can get hit, by ransomware. They don't recover. And I'm assuming that's not gotten any better because ransomware, cyber attacks, the bad guys, they've just increased. COVID opened so many doors for them to get into to infiltrate networks and to infiltrate things that, we're going to be dealing with the ramifications of that for years. And Dusty said it right. You could go out of business. You could go bankrupt.
Right.
If you get breached, if you get crypto locked, ransomware, whatever it is, you could go out of business.
I think sometimes when you're hitting like a rock wall in these meetings, is you just have the wrong people in the meeting. Sometimes.
Oh, that's a good point, Dusty.
That's true.
You just have you have an office manager when you should have the CEO in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have.
That's why you do a recap email and you copy the CEO.
That's right.
Here's what we talk about. And I think a good kind of just along these lines, a good positioning is if someone said to me, just thinking if I'm a client and you're sitting down with me, saying something along the lines of, when something bad happens, I'm the first person you're going to call. Like you guys are the first person that they're going to call when something bad happens, right? So it is, but I'm just saying, like, so I'm sitting here today with you I'm explaining these risks to you because it is my responsibility to tell you because I would much rather protect you now than have to tell you I told you so later.
That's right.
You know, so it's almost just a positioning of having the conversation, kind of like Brittany put in the chat here, you know, positioning yourself as an advisor because we care for you.
That's right.
And that relationship aspect of it really does help the conversation go a little bit easier with those that might be more challenging.
Yeah.
We're down to about 10 minutes. Go ahead, Dusty. One more point.
I was just saying, especially when you're strategizing with the client for the long term, you're right there with them. You're in the trenches with the client.
That's right.
Right.
You know, I'll give you another one. You talked about we want you to call, or you call us when things go bad, right?
Yeah.
So I want to foster a relationship and have a relationship with you so that you call me when you need a plumber, when you need an electrician. When you, hey, do you know a guy or do you know somebody that does this?
I want to be solving all the problems. Yeah.
Why are you asking me this? Well, you've been a good advisor to me so far.
That's right.
That's right. That's the kind of relationship we're trying to build with these clients overall.
Yeah.
They'll come to us when we're not the experts.
Yeah. I build off that because when we were in the QBR, we were in our QBRs, right, Paul, and we're learning about our customers and their industries and what they do. I have connected several of my other clients together who need the same service.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, it happens more than often.
Absolutely.
When you're adding true business value. I love it.
Absolutely.
We have about 8 minutes left, so I just want to make sure I open up. We can continue to talk if we don't have any questions. I just throw them in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself and come on camera and talk and ask questions. These are some people, speaking of in the trenches, these guys on this call right here are people that are in the trenches doing it every day that we can all learn from, even if we are, 10 years ahead of them or 10 years behind them. We can certainly learn from each other, right? So who has questions?
Bring them on.
Don't be shy.
Let's go.
Or just a thought. If anybody wants to add anything.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that having waivers for customers who do not want to have services selected, especially when it comes to securing networks, gateways, when they're processing credit cards, is imperative so that whenever their networks do get breached, as we've had some customers happen, and then the credit card companies, the banks, everybody wants to come after you, including the customer. It's really wonderful to whip out that little waiver that they've signed and already filed with the credit card companies so that they become solely liable for their own breach.
Yeah, and I'll actually build off that, Linda, too. As our MSP evolves, our E&O insurance is technically are going to require us to have declination forms.
Absolutely.
So some of them today do, some of them don't. So this is right around the corner. So great. Yeah, absolutely, Linda. But I would have to say, if you ever have to whip that form out, your relationship with that client's not doing so well after that.
Over, yeah. But again, you've got it, and you need to protect yourself for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what you've done, you've explained the risk to them. They've said, I'll accept that risk, and we're like, well, I won't. So sign this over.
There you go. Yeah. I think that's a great way to position it. Absolutely.
And they're our friend until they're breached. They don't mind signing that form, but when they get breached, they're not happy. And then they're like, why didn't you tell me? I told you the day you signed that form, I really recommend otherwise, but you didn't seem to mind.
Yep.
Right. Who was that? Who wrote that? Is that Randy Travis? I told you so.
Oh yeah.
Song
yes.
Told you so, but you
just send them that song on with all the documents they signed.
Randy Travis has got so many good songs that can help you in life.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I like that point about having the wrong people in the meeting though. So how I'd be interested to know how we feel like we can avoid that. Obviously I'm developing new opportunities for my business. And so when I get on a call, that's one of the first questions I ask is who's going to be signing the contract? Who's making this decision so that I make sure that I don't go round and round with the wrong person. So how do you avoid that in those meetings?
Naturally, you're going to want a decision maker in there almost, if we're at least at the minimum.
How do you do that? Hey, we're not showing up, so you have a decision maker in the room. Is there a way to avoid having the wrong people in there?
That's a good question.
Not really.
Well, it is hard, but I don't know about you, Dusty, but 8 times out of 10, we know who those people are, and we ask specifically for them to be in there.
I would also say, like, the people who hold the culture weight of that client is also really important. So people who can actually move the wheels might
Yeah.
not be a decision maker, but they might need to be in that meeting too.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. We just recently we signed a new client, and the guy wasn't necessarily the ultimate decision maker, but the CEO was like, well, whatever you recommend, what I'm going to do.
It says, yeah.
Right. So
I would
he
say
was the de facto decision maker essentially, but technically he wasn't.
some of the best meetings I had with the clients is when they have their entire management team. Now that's definitely not required, and it's probably a unicorn, right?
Right.
But those are one of the best meetings I have with the clients is when their entire management team's in there.
Yeah, you're talking about a captive audience. If you can get the whole entire management team, then don't let that go.
Right.
Make sure you get everything out.
Pull out all the stops in that one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other questions related to that, Linda? That was a great point. I appreciate you contributing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I don't see any other questions come in. Got about 4 more minutes. So I really appreciate you guys showing up, especially you, Paul, our bonus guest. This is hugely valuable. If you found value in this webinar, I'd love to see a 1 in the chat just so that we know that people were, we hung on to a lot of people on this one. So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have a download to offer you before you go, and I'll actually show you this beautiful slide that Anna made. I don't want to skip out on that. So Anna is going to put in the chat the link to capture this QBR blueprint that we've provided for you. It's absolutely free to you and something you can use to help your team guide your clients to the next QBR. We see some folks in the chat saying they found value. Lots of ones. Awesome. That's great. Great to see. So if you'll go to that link in the chat, you can grab that free download from us. And this will be recorded. And if you registered for this event, then you will get the link to the recording. So if you want to share it with your team, we'd love for you to do that. Of course, if you subscribe to the Business Growers YouTube, you'll also see that content posted here quickly. And we did hear so many really good snippets drop today. We're probably going to be posting this link on our own social media for quite some time. So guys, thank you so much. You brought a lot of value today. Again, congrats to both of your companies on the MSP 501 acknowledgement. And I'm proud to call you both clients and looking forward to continued success for both Scipio and Fuse.Cloud. Thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, everyone.
It's been fun.
Welcome. Thanks.
Thanks.
Enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.